Hey, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. The Grammy nominations are out for this coming ceremony, and I will be giving some thoughts on that very soon on the main channel in terms of my hopes and predictions for those nominations broadly. But for a moment, let's talk about one of the more controversial news points to come out of these nominations, and that is Marilyn Manson being up for a nomination and Louis C.K. being up for a nomination. Let's go into the story a little bit here, and then I will give my thoughts. The Recording Academy's CEO responded to the controversial Grammy nominations Tuesday for artists like Marilyn Manson and Louis C.K. Now, if you didn't know, Louis C.K. recently had a comedy album drop. He's kind of getting his career back on track after the accusations that were leveled at him back in 2017, which he apologized for and owned up to. And Marilyn Manson is nominated for his inclusion on the Kanye track Jail, because that track is nominated. And as a result of that, all the writers, which Manson is considered a writer on the track, are sort of a part of that nomination, or each get their sub-nomination. I'm not sure how exactly it technically works when a song has like so many writer credits on it, but as a result of that song being nominated, Manson is technically nominated for that track. So when asked by The Wrap about Manson's nomination specifically, the CEO said that the company or the Academy does not take into account personal history when determining eligibility for its awards, but he said that does not necessarily mean that they will be invited to the Grammy ceremony. We won't restrict the people who can submit their material for consideration. We won't look back at people's history nor their criminal record. We won't look at anything other than the legality within our rules. Is this recording for this work eligible based on date and other criteria? If it is, they can submit for consideration, Mason told The Wrap. He continued saying, "We will control our stages, our shows, our events, our red carpets. We'll take a look at anyone who is asking to be a part of that, asking to be in attendance, and we'll make our decisions at that point. But we're not going to be in the business of restricting people from submitting their work for our voters to decide on." So let me get my thoughts on each of these cases, starting with Louis, because I think these two situations are a little different, given that he has a whole new record out that's dedicated solely to him under his name. And as I said, recently he has been kind of getting his career back together. Look, obviously what Louis C.K. got called out for and caught doing was awful. But again, he did apologize. He did own up to it. As far as we can see, he has been sort of avoiding that behavior. If there's an audience of people out there who want to hear him, who want to see his show, if there's a venue that will have him, I think that is fine. Do I think it's maybe a little premature to jump right into like a Grammy nomination right now, especially when like the Bo Burnham record came out and that's not apparently considered a comedy record for some reason. Not that that would have necessitated bumping Louis C.K. off the list, but still it is a point worth noting. Once again, personally, I have no issue with Louis C.K. picking up the broken pieces and carrying on, especially since he did own up to what he did. Could he have done better in terms of making amends behind the scenes? Maybe, possibly. I mean, those are details I'm not privy to necessarily, but Louis C.K. I sort of thought was going to end up continuing forward, moving on anyway, and it seems like he's mostly doing that. I'm kind of surprised that the Grammys are, claiming to not care about past history and so on and so forth, when there's so many industry entities out there that are very much concerned with that sort of thing. It's almost a standard at this point. So why the Grammys wouldn't also be interested in sort of protecting the brand name by, having a little caveat saying, well, if like you're sort of toxic and you're known as like an abuser or some kind of like, a sexual miscreant that takes advantage of other people, or, somebody who assaults people regularly, we won't consider you for a Grammy. Now, look, you may say, Anthony, separate the artist from the art, and I get that argument. argument. I understand, and I think it's, especially worth making that argument in the case of Louis C.K. Whether or not he should get a Grammy nomination, I think is a bit of a gray area. However, in terms of Manson, I think it's especially egregious, considering that the allegations against him are so much more heinous. There's a pattern to them. In his album cycle around the high end of Low, he pretty much just made abuse a part of his, story arc. And look, Manson is not really engaged with these allegations in any serious way. He's completely written them off. Kanye West, for reasons that can only be rationalized as ridiculous, has decided to, at least in part, make Manson a part of his recent album cycle as some kind of ineffective statement about redemption, or maybe just allegations not being real or fake. I think it's another Cosby innocent type moment. What exactly is the narrative here? If the allegations are fake, why does Manson need to come on to this sort of Christian themed album cycle with you and redeem himself if nothing happened to begin with? And if he is redeeming himself in the eyes of God through this whole thing, what is he redeeming himself for? What did he do? He can't possibly be seeking redemption for the allegations that he has not admitted to. But look, I find the Manson nomination here not as much troubling as I do confusing, because it's not like he's the lead artist on the track. I mean, he's nominated because of Kanye's really stupid decision to have him involved in Donda in the first place. I see this ultimately as Kanye's fault, with Manson getting through on a technicality. But having said that, because it is a technicality and Manson is getting in on a mere writer credit here, he's not the lead artist or creator or producer on this song, it seems like it would be really easy in this one instance, at least, because I think all of this ultimately is on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's one single one-size-fits-all rule that's going to eliminate all controversial nominations from here until the end of time with the Grammys or any other, media award show. Any sensible approach to this situation is going to be case-by-case, because nobody is asking the Grammys to broadly look into the criminal history of every artist seeking a nomination for an award. Nobody at large gives a shit if, an artist has a shoplifting charge on their record or something like that. Nobody wants you to start pushing people out of the nomination pool because they got caught for having too much weed on them or some shit. I think the care and focus around these decisions should be specific, and the specific allegations and the very specific court testimony against Marilyn Manson in this instance, they're pretty egregious and I think unignorable. And I don't see why the Grammys couldn't just simply be Kanye, we think he's a great artist and a visionary and amazing, and we think his new project is pretty good and very much worth everybody's attention. But he is also kind of misguided at points, in his decision to feature Manson so prominently in his music around this time was the case. And while we can't control who he does and who he does not have on his tracks, we at the Grammys don't have to hand him over an award for being involved in such. So, we're just going to pass on that for this one time. So yeah, in summation, I think the CEO's response here is kind of silly and short-sighted, because as he says down here once again in this third paragraph is this recording for this work eligible based on the date or other criteria? What is other criteria? Other criteria is most likely the regular criteria that they decide eligibility for just about every album and record that passes through, the Grammys' ears and paws. And what I mean by pointing that out is undoubtedly there's a lot of this criteria that's pretty arbitrary and also just taste-based, and way more irrelevant than whether or not the person in question has committed horrible crimes of abuse against people. I mean, that's just my thought. That's how I see it. Some people might complain about the slippery slope in terms of the limitation here. I feel like this situation here with the lack of limitations is the slippery slope, because like there's literally nothing stopping the Grammys from, I don't know, nominating a neo-Nazi here. Like, oh, we're not going to look at your past or anything, you know, whether or not you were a neo-Nazi like years ago or maybe a few weeks ago. I mean, or maybe even just yesterday. We don't really care. We're not going to look at that. It's irrelevant to us. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm a little on the fence about Louis C.K. getting the nomination here, and definitely against the idea of Manson getting a nomination here. And I think, you know, the response from the CEO is just kind of ridiculous as usual, but he hasn't really been the best media front for the Grammys since he stepped in. I mean, nominally better than the last guy that said, the ladies got to step it up. Step it up, ladies. But this is really not that much better. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Those are my thoughts. You're the best. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Louis C.K., Manson, all the Grammys, forever.